SaharaTV, you're welcome back. This is a special segment with our visiting panel to further discuss issues pertaining to the gubernatorial elections currently underway in Nigeria. We've had several updates, and with me in the studio to dissect these issues, Ernest Danjuma. Ernest is a social commentator and a political pundit. You're welcome, Ernest.
Thank you very much.
Once again, because I know you've already been on the show.
Yeah.
And we also have on the show Bukola Oreofe, who has also been on the show so far. Bukola is Executive Director for the Nigerian Democratic Liberty Forum, an advocacy group. You're welcome, Bukola.
Thank you, Kwesi.
Okay, let's look at some of the issues that are arising from the gubernatorials at the moment. First of all, there's a reported low turnout in areas where we expected quite, a substantial amount of voter turnout. What do you think accounts for this? Danjuma, let me start with you.
Yeah. As I said in the in an earlier segment, I think we could have predicted this anyway, because the election 2 weeks ago, the government imposed a curfew, so the only way people could actually go out and vote, leave their houses that day was either essential personnel or if you were going out to vote. So it made it more of a priority for people who wanted to go out to go vote. I think what we're seeing today is sort of the voter apathy that has sort of plagued elections in years past. But it's not uncommon for sort of a I liken it to sort of the even within the United States, the gubernatorial elections and state elections usually have a much lower turnout from the presidential elections, because for some reason, even though the stakes are maybe even higher, people kind of don't feel as connected to it. But I mean, not to take that away from there's still a lot of enthusiasm, especially in key areas where people. Key areas where,
like Lagos, for instance.
Exactly. The voter turnout was obviously a bit lower than than it was 2 weeks ago, because people were going about doing other things, and people were less sort of tied to the fact that they wouldn't brave those conditions to sort of stay in line and wait to vote and then have their ballots counted, because they just didn't feel like the stakes were as high as they were last week.
For the presidentials. Yeah, Bukola, let me ask you on the same issue. Do people feel like we've achieved what we want by having the PDP voted out of the presidency, so anything else is good enough? Is that perhaps what's happening?
Yes, to an extent, that's part of it. And we also have to understand that there's been a lot of hype around the election for quite some time. Election was supposed to have taken place February 14th, and it was postponed to March 28th. So a lot of things have actually gone in to the extent that people may feel they've dissipated enough energy towards this election. It's been very tough. Running against an incumbent who is also very vested in the system, it's not a child's play, so to speak. So the opposition, you would agree with me that even tactically, the PDP had to postpone these elections so as to wear out the opposition. And that's why General Buhari had to even take time off to go to London for about 10 days and say, you know what, let it be. They also had to...
Wear out, I'm trying to understand that. The wear out financially, wear out in terms of...
Financially, one, and also, you also recall that prior to the postponement, they had gone around the 36 states of the Federation. So having to do that all over again, I'm sure it will be very tiring, and also has financial implications. And the PDP, like I said, tactically tried to wear them out. Even the Minister of Finance had to give a standing instruction that banks should not lend out to state governments any longer except she approves it. This is a finance minister that also has a stake in making sure President Jonathan comes back to power. And what I read was that virtually all the applications that went to her, she didn't even give it no approval. So in a way, people were really...
How do you connect that with the elections, though?
Yeah, I'm trying to come to that now. So you could see that even at the top echelon of opposition party, they are kind of tired. Okay, so how do you engage the people? If you don't have enough money to do a lot of advertisement, you don't have so much money to do outreach, you can mobilize the voters, then their engagement also, becomes lower. So at the end of the day, they did all that for February 14th. It was called off to March 28th, 6 weeks later on. So all through, that was really a tough thing for them. So now coming to the election, they feel General Buhari has won. So the goal has been met in a way. And they also say, okay, what next? Who's going to win is going to win. That's like Irali said, even in America, midterm elections doesn't attract a lot of interest as a presidential. And unfortunately in Nigeria, where we also centralize everything, people believe whatever happens in the center is going to determine their future at lower levels. So once they think they've achieved what they want to achieve at the federal level, then it behoves on them to say, you know what, there's going to be a coattail of the fact that whoever wins in the center, there's going to be a lot of sympathy and a lot of interest in the states, and people will likely vote for the same person. So it comes to a point where people say, you know what, oh, APC is going to win because they won the center. So kind of also affects the apathy, on the part of the people where they think, okay, we already know what's going to happen, and that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
I think just to make one more point, the thing, what you also have to think about voter turnout is this: when there's energy to kind of when you're anti something, there's a lot more. There's a lot more energy, and that energy doesn't necessarily translate, into the local governments. Like I was saying before, Lagos State, the problem really is between good and good and better. It's not necessarily, and that trickles down throughout all the states. There are very few governors that people feel like we have to get this person out, and that's what galvanizes the people. That's the kind of energy that you saw, in last week, 2 weeks ago, and even that election, the turnout was really low, for the kind of, for one, the amount of people who voted, and for the amount of people who registered to vote, which was low, but the amount of the people who actually turned out to vote, even from that number, was actually kind of low.
Lower.
So I think that energy that people had last week, where there was a set of people who were determined to vote out the incumbent, and and in return the incumbent's supporters were determined, they understood what the opposition was, and so they were actually energized as well to kind of defend their mandate. And
Okay, so let me ask you again. Do you think there will be a situation where people would, for instance, have voted for the APC in the presidentials, but would come back and vote, say, PDP on the gubernatorial level?
And yeah, there are situations like that. There are a couple of states where the federal and the state the state level, they kind of have they have differences in the parties, and in past elections we've seen this, even in Lagos State, where they voted overwhelmingly for for the incumbent, Fashola, who was that time under the ACN, and overwhelmingly in the exact same election, by almost 90% voted for Jonathan in the exact same election. So you're gonna see that trend in a few states, but I think generally speaking, because of because of the anti-Jonathan sentiment at the federal level, it has somewhat it has overflown into a lot of the states. So you're seeing a lot more energy for APC candidates, even in states where they weren't players before, and they necessarily and they really don't have a good case for for turning to the opposition party.
Okay, Bukola, we also read of what's his name, Babajide Obanikoro, who is the son of Musikilu. So I'm sorry, Obanikoro. Yeah, he was escorted from a polling station accused of distributing money. First of all, is anybody going to be moved at this 11th hour by money, by pittance given to them on the 11th hour? Do you think he has any business at all even trying to do that?
Well, he has no business doing that, and I would expect that he shouldn't just be escorted out; he should be arrested, because that's against the spirit and the letter of the electoral law. You can't do that. And if there's anything we need to call the politicians out, is to make sure they don't intimidate, and they also don't interfere, and of course they don't buy people's votes. You should let people go out and express their free will. I'm not surprised that happened. Is anybody going to be moved? I'm not going to generalize. So some people might feel, it's not right for them to collect the money and to also vote accordingly. But some might say, okay, you gave me the money, I didn't ask for it. I can afford to also go in and exercise my right the way I feel. It won't be out of place to see that happen. But what really bothers me in all of this is this. And I also know that there's a lot at stake in Lagos State. The guy, Jide Obanikoro, is the son to Musili Obanikoro, who is the Minister for State for Foreign Affairs in the Jonathan administration. And they are staking their last fight in Lagos. We know what Bola Tinubu did with Lagos when PDP was controlling the federal. It was reported that the financial resources of Lagos State was used in election in winning the southwest states, Ogun, Oyo, Osun, Ondo, and Ekiti State, before PDP won those two states. And that to a large extent, that Lagos actually funded ACN and APC. So if PDP obviously has lost the center, so it's also necessary for them to also play the same card that the APC played when they were also in the opposition, to make sure they can also get Lagos State. Lagos has huge amount of money that comes in. So if they can get Lagos, they can get Rivers. That would also be good for them. So Jide Obanikoro being arrested there, I believe is going to be part of the machination of the PDP to be able to also, win the state. Lagos State has a lot in this. The national leader of APC, Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, is also from Lagos. Chief Bode George, who I said is going to go on exile if General Buhari comes in, also has an axe to grind. You have, the mix of all of this coming in. And of course, with what the Oba said a couple of days ago with regards to the Igbo. So there's a lot of balling going on in Lagos, and everybody's actually staking their own claims to be able
How sophisticated is the Nigerian voter, though? I'm trying to get like a general picture of how far the Nigerian voter has come in terms of dealing with temptations, like someone offering you money at the polling station.
Right. I think, again, to an extent, some will be wooed to vote for the person who is saying, take this money and vote for me. But I think on a larger scale, that will not matter, because we understood that President Goodluck Jonathan came to the Southwest, brought huge amount of money to give to the obers, to give to the pastors, and also to give to the voters, and that didn't do anything for him. So which means that money actually went down the drain. So sophistication speaking, I would say yes, they're wise enough to know that you can't give this money and put my future and my children in peril going down the road. So I strongly believe, yes, some might be tempted to say, okay, you give me money, I'm going to vote for your person or your candidate. But I think on a general basis, based on what we saw, the presidential election, that will not give you the votes.
Okay, I don't think the money went down the drain, though. It went to the right place.
I agree.
The money went home. Do you expect any prosecutions in the Babajide case? Bukola just mentioned that it shouldn't end there. He shouldn't be escorted away. He should actually be. And I remember someone making that point about how he was calmly, escorted into the car, as opposed to someone else. How would they have treated him? Are you expecting any prosecutions?
I think that they will. A lot of what happens in Nigeria depends on outcome, right? If the outcome, if it factors into the outcome, there's going to be a lot more noise made. If it doesn't, like he said, I don't imagine it will, then I don't think much will come of it. And when you have a government that is coming in, and PDP is already making they've already gone into opposition mode, where they're starting to play the exact same games that sort of ACN and APC have played over a long time, where you kind of throw fire at every little, you put, gas in every little fire and make it, into an attack on you, an attack on civil liberties and whatnot. So I imagine that they will play the exact same games. They took the Oba's comments and, kind of blew that into a national sort of statement on APC's part. They try to make it like, oh, this is what an APC regime is going to be. They're going to be intimidating people into. So I think APC in themselves will want to kind of scale back on kind of not to be seen as the party going out on a witch hunt for an opposition that it has already defeated. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so I don't imagine that much will come of it if the outcome in Lagos isn't affected by it.
Okay. Bukola, is the PDP dying? Some pundits are saying that if the PDP fails to clinch at least 21 seats and also make a solid impact in the areas which are traditionally considered APC strongholds, the party stands a good chance of going extinct. Do you share this sentiment?
Yeah, but the election today is taking place in 29 states. I mean, there's no way they're going to win 21 states. That bar will be too high and it will be very unrealistic. It's not fair.
Very unfortunate.
Yeah, right out of the 29, they control 17, and APC has 12. So the question becomes, how many of those 17 are they going to retain? Are they going to go into extinction? I would say no. Are they going to go into doldrum? I would say yes. Meaning, for quite some time, they have to go back to the drawing board, pick up their pieces and see where they've gone wrong, and see if they can get people that can also attract, people to the party. Don't let us kid ourselves. There's a lot of party going on in APC right now, but the honeymoon will soon be over.
Exactly.
When a lot of people with their agenda will start coming up. And guess what? The room cannot take everybody. I mean, there are fewer ministerial appointments that can go around. There are fewer board pastor appointments that can go around. There are few oil wells that can go around. And everybody will lay claim to all of these. So when you don't give them what they aspire for, then that becomes grounds for them to start bickering. They came from PDP to APC, not on principle, but just because they couldn't get their ways. Can you imagine that Barnabas Gimade, former PDP chairman, actually left PDP to APC and got the ticket to run for senator 2 hours after I got there? So that means when you open the door for me to come and get something, I will be there. But when you close the door at me, then I'm gone. And you see a lot of movements going around. Look at Adamawa, for instance. The person running for APC, Senator Jubila Bindo, was actually in APC, and Ribadu was in APC, went to PDP, and it was Senator Bindo was in PDP and went to APC. So you see all these movements coming around. At the end of the day, when everything settles and governance starts and appointments, are concluded, and when people don't think they've had a fair share based on whatever they think is their own right, based on what they put into the election, then the whole thing starts. So if PDP, if they're wise, all they have to do is just calm down. I mean, you've been there for 19 years. What else? What do you think? Even though for 16 years, sorry. Even though it was a fallacy to have thought they're going to be there for 60 years, but 16 years in this time is a long time. So all you got to do is go back to the drawing board, see people of like minds that are left behind and start strategizing. They still have governors in place. So I just do hope that Nigerian politics can actually be based on philosophy and ideologies, where we can have a distinction between these parties based on what people do aspire for, so that all these scandalous movement of politicians overnight to parties will be a thing of the past. And then we can actually settle to develop a democracy, and people can be able to say, yeah, I'm here not because of what I want to get out of it, but because what I want to contribute to the development and growth of the country. It doesn't happen. So PDP shouldn't go into extinction. I won't speak for them, but I would think they shouldn't go into extinction. They just had to go back to the drawing board. 2 years ago, nobody ever thought that any party, especially APC, will come in and defeat an incumbent president. Nobody thought about that. But PDP had the problems, and people started moving. So who knows what's going to happen 1, 2 years, 3 years down the road?
Point.
So certain things, the dynamics will change, and you might have things, taking shape too.
Good point. Danjuma, is there a mass defection? Obviously, there's a mass defection going on from the PDP to the APC. Is this going to affect voting as well at the gubernatorial level? Is there going to be a bandwagon effect? Like people don't want to belong to the losing side.
Correct.
You
correct.
think
you're,
that's
you're,
going to
you're,
happen?
You're right about that. But the thing with Nigerian politics is the parties are not distinguished by ideas. These are exactly the exact same people, kind of moving and hodgepodging and forming parties, forming alliances and whatnot. So what's going to happen is people are going to continue. They're going to continue to move, as he said. When the politics don't necessarily favor them, as it won't. Going forward, they're going to be people who defect to different parties. And for me, we want what this election was a statement that we don't want Nigeria to be a one-party. We don't want Nigeria to be a one-party state. Mm-hmm. So to now have it be a one-party state in a different direction isn't, that doesn't necessarily solve the problem. What we want is a robust debate, that's centered around ideas and one that's performance based. You know what I mean? And I think that what will happen ultimately, what will be the undoing of APC is performance, is how they perform in the different states. Obviously, how the president performs at the national level will have a trickle-down effect, into the states. But also how the governors in the states perform will have, will definitely have an effect as well.
To tell.
Correct.
Okay. People also say, I've heard someone saying, albeit jokingly, that after 16 years of the PDP, we deserve 16 years of the APC.
No.
How important is a vibrant opposition? Is the APC, is the PDP positioned to present a vibrant opposition to the APC? And do you see the APC staying for 16 years?
Well, the opposition is very critical in a democracy because you can't have a one-party state where you can do no wrong and nobody can question what you say, and no one can offer alternative ideas and viewpoints. The country will be worse for that. It's always the part of the growth and development we aspire for is to have check and balance, where when the government of the day does something, the opposition can say, "Oh, that's not the right way to do this."
That's right.
I mean, President Obama, I think every day wakes up, as much as he comes up with his policies, he thinks about what the Republican has to say against this. And in the process, he's going to make sure whatever policies coming up with are foolproof against criticism and, of course, against failure. So it's very essential for Nigeria as well, because of the state of the fledgling state of our democracy. We also need to be able to have people who would speak out against what the government of the day is doing, because they have alternative ideas to provide. Would the PDP be able to provide a vibrant, robust opposition? They should, because they've been in power for a while. So they know where the shoes, does pinch. So when you are in office, and of course you know what you're doing might not be right, but at least you understand how the system works. So when you have the facts and figures, like let's say, for instance, APC loses Lagos State. APC knows how much money comes into the coffer of the government every month. They know how much goes to education, health, infrastructure, and all that. So if the new government comes in and they start doing things contrary to what they should do, then the APC can also challenge the PDP and say, "Oh, what you're doing is not right. You're not bringing in enough money to be able to address the problems of the state, or you're taking too much loans and all that." So I think PDP is well positioned to be a very good opposition based on the fact that they've been in power for 16 years, so they know what's going on in the
wealth of experience.
They have wealth of experience to tap into and to be able to question what the government does. We really have to speak out. Those of us who are not affiliated, so to speak, we have to make sure we can demand that not only PDP, but even the smaller political parties
as well,
you should encourage them to also grow, because when they grow, you say what we witness of the movement between those two parties would cease. Then you can have a broader ideas and alternatives come to the table. Then when you start moving around, I think by the time you go to 2-3 parties, it'll be time for you to stop, because it becomes a political harlot, so to speak.
Totally.
when you go around like that.
No, but I think where the punishment ultimately comes, for being a political harlot, as you put it, is in the voters, right? Everybody has a right to, kind of affiliate themselves with whatever party they want. I mean, what was the governor in Florida he was a Republican, he ran as Republican, ran as Independent, ran as a Democrat, in different elections in 3 consecutive cycles, lost all of them, but and so that's where the voters actually punish you for that. But ultimately, with regards to PDP being a stronger position, I think you're already seeing that they will be, because some of the statements that they're putting out and the ways in which they're dealing with a lot of the things coming up now, you're starting to see that they're definitely going to provide a valid opposition. But the people, generally speaking, I don't think any party should be too comfortable, because the amount of voters that are actually party affiliated is very, very low compared to the amount of people that vote. So if you don't have people who are card-carrying members of your party, you can't really lay claim to their vote at any one time. So I think that's a good part, that a lot of people, are independent voters,
like
to be undecided voters for, so their votes are up for grabs as well. As you can see, Jonathan won the last election by 10 million votes and lost this election by 2.5 million. So within one cycle, a lot can change. So, the problem I have with PDP is they run the risk of, becoming a regional party, and that's what can be their undoing. You know what I mean?
Okay, we'll definitely pick up this discussion. I want us to pick up this discussion because there are some questions that I really want to hear your opinion on.
Correct.
But that will be in the next panel
Okay.
that comes up. Stay tuned. This is Sahara TV. There's more coming.